Hey friend, welcome back to Shut Down Not Shaken, a special mini-series of the At Ease podcast. I am your host, Kristen Candace, and today we are talking about pivots. When we talk about effective leadership, the true test is rarely in smooth, predictable times. It comes when the ground shifts beneath our feet, when organizations are rocked by furloughs, layoffs, or other crisis moments. In this episode, I'm joined by Dr. Nandi Shareef, a leadership expert who experienced her own professional pivot after being laid off during the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, she helps managers and leaders navigate those same moments of instability, layoffs, furloughs, and organizational change with clarity and compassion. In our conversation, we explore how she navigated organizational disruption, how managers can move from feeling helpless to finding agency, how asking the right questions can shift culture, and how supporting your team in crisis can become the pivot point for change. If you're a Black woman leader or manager facing uncertainty or disruption in your organization, this episode is for you. We dig into what you can control, how to influence when things feel out of your hands, and how to create movement even when it feels like everything has stopped. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Hi, Nandi.
Hi, Kristen.
How are you?
I'm doing really great.
I am super grateful that you are joining me today. I know, because I know you, that you have a lot of value to offer our listeners. So go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell them anything you'd like them to know.
Hey, I can do that. Well, the first important thing you should know is that I'm Kristen's line sister. I'm so proud to be 17 years of together. So that's the thing that I'm most proudest of in this moment for this conversation. But I'm also an executive coach. I have a PhD in organization development. I've spent almost 20 years in my career helping leaders and executives get clear and aware around what works and what doesn't so that they can be as effective and as successful as they possibly can be because they are the ones who lead the workforce. They make an incredible impact on people every single day. They make life changing decisions for us. Okay.
Okay.
And when they have the right people in their ear, the right counsel, the right support, but more importantly, the right people to listen and ask good questions, they're able to come to conclusions that are not just valuable for the business, but they also are transformative in a really positive way for the people that they lead and manage.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so important. And, having, I'm like, that was a lot. And I just, obviously we're in the middle of a government shutdown. And when we talk about these life-changing decisions, there's a lot of decisions being made now at the federal level that are having major impacts on feds, contractors, military, and there is a trickle down effect, right?
Mhm,
I talked
mhm,
to
mhm.
someone at homecoming who is an esthetician. People can't afford their facials
Say
anymore.
that.
My
Mhm.
therapist talked about premiums going up, and
Yeah.
people may not be able to afford therapy in the same way. And so I'm just curious, if you were or working with a manager who has a team that has been furloughed, we're now into week 5
Mm.
of the furlough. How would you advise them, or what would you say to them as they are trying to support their team?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll take this to maybe like a greater macro context. So there have been significant layoffs that have been happening in the market since the pandemic. And I was actually blessed to have one of those layoffs because it sent me into full time entrepreneurship. But what I know about the experience of managers and leaders, especially when an edict or a directive has been handed down, is that they often feel helpless on the other side of layoffs or furloughs or rifts that have occurred. And I find that leaders are oftentimes asking themselves the question, well, what can I do? I'm just a little manager. I just had a team of 5 and now there are only 2 people left. I'm 7 spaces down or 7 levels down, excuse me, from the C-suite or from the president of the organization. How does my voice matter? And I think that those are very valid questions. However, those questions are low yielding questions. They don't get a leader anything other than, well, you really can't do nothing because you're right, you're not the CEO. And so it would be actually more effective and more helpful for them to ask the question, what can I do? What's in my power? What can I control? What can I influence? How might I support my team? How might I support the people that are still standing? And figuring out how to make movement, because oftentimes when you make movement, it then begets more movement. So now that you're in it, now that you're having conversations, now that you find yourself being effective or supporting people or helping to progress something, you begin to find windows and doors that are open then in a way that you didn't suspect when you were standing still.
Yeah, I love that. What can we do? What is
Mm.
within our power? What can we control? And even as you were saying it, because I have been asking those questions, but some new stuff came up for me as to how I can continue to support my team throughout this. And it's interesting because when you're in middle management, you get the perspective of being a manager, but you're also still somebody's employee,
That's
right?
right.
And so what I have been thinking about is what is missing? Like what am I not getting from my manager that could be supportive, even if it's just a check-in on my well-being? So you got my gears turning again. So thank you. Thank you
Of
for
course,
that.
of course. Mhm.
You mentioned your own layoff
Uh,
related to the pandemic.
yeah.
Can you talk about what was happening in your life and career at that time
Oh my
when you were
gosh.
laid off and how you initially processed that moment?
Oh yeah. This is interesting, but is not by any means an anomaly. When I was laid off in 2020, it was actually the end of a series of really terrible, tragic events in my life. And it was just a part of the snowball. So by the time it had occurred, I feel like I was so well processed in all of those challenges and difficulties that I was like, "Mm." Other one bites the dust, like really just but I will say, I think my life was a really was very interesting in that I was already in the process of transitioning into full time entrepreneurship, and about 6 weeks after the pandemic was, or after the pandemic started, or we call it started, was my own D Day. It was 4 years of me being in my company, and that was the moment where I was saying, "Okay, team, I built my business on the side, and I'm leaving." But then 6 weeks before, we hear about this thing called the coronavirus, and I'm like, "Oh, God-fearing, God-loving person leaves their company or their organization at the moment that a global pandemic and crisis happens. So I'm gonna stay put."
Yeah.
Especially given everything that had gone on. So I'd had a breakup at that time. I had friendship breakups at that time. I think it was really sort of, and I was in California, so I was very isolated because all of my folks were Midwest to the East Coast. And so I sat in the seat. And then thankfully I had a new manager at the time who I didn't know really well, who needed to do some layoffs. And she was asking some really hard questions. And she was someone who had a doctorate, who left corporate, who went into business for herself. And I really take her pushing me out of the organization as her way of saying, "You've got this." With a little sign off from the chief people officer too, like, "Nandi, I hope you do well in your in your executive coaching business." I'm like, "Okay, you earned the street, and also people believing you, so let's go." So it ended up being such a blessing because I had severance, and nobody wanted to touch equipment at that point. So I also got a laptop and was able to keep it and I got everything that I needed to essentially build up my business. And it was very much a blessing for me in the moment, even though it didn't feel like as much of a blessing, 'cause it was still very disorienting. But it set off a chain reaction of events in my life where it went from, wow, these are some of the hardest months I've ever had in my life. All of these losses, all these things have broken down to me moving across the country, driving in the middle of the pandemic, moving back to where I went to college, because that's where I owned a home, to settle in, to wait for a vaccine, to become a digital nomad and live in Cape Town, South Africa, because that was the plan. But how God knows. That is not what happened. 6 months into the year where I was waiting, I met my husband. So, had none of that happened, I wouldn't be married right now, and wouldn't have a dog, and wouldn't have a beautiful house on the beach, all those things. So I have learned the importance and the value of like shift what you can in terms of perspective in the moment and get what you can out of it, but also you can only connect the dots backward. So it may be days, weeks, months, years before you're able to actually make sense of why did this happen in this way, in this moment, and for what purpose. But do know that the purpose is always to forward you, to progress you, to serve you for what your life's purpose is. I know it doesn't feel like that though. I'm not trying to minimize anything.
No, no. I mean, it's good. It's good. And it's also really beautiful, right? To
Mm,
just think about, you talked about those decisions that leaders make and they change people's lives.
yeah.
And I think oftentimes many of us sit in the doom and gloom of the impact of those decisions. But what I hear you saying is that's not how it worked out for you. It
Mm-mm.
actually ended up being for your good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's important for people to know that that's possible.
Yeah, even when you don't expect it. Like I get that my story was one where I was already planning to transition, but I've met even many leaders myself that I've coached who have gone on to have incredible careers, who have amazing stories around their layoffs. And even their terminations, not even layoffs. It wasn't everybody, it was them. But they're able to actually speak to had this not occurred, here are the things, that happened as a result, and they would have never happened had I not stepped out of that organization. What I will say is there may be many people that are listening to your podcast, Kristen, that are asking, or not even asking, they're like, I'm not there yet. I'm not able to actually see the forest through the trees, or not either, there's not a forest, it's just a tree. And I get that, and I get how it feels like that. And this is the moment to take stock and to take account of how you're feeling, what you're experiencing, the challenges that have come with this. Let yourself process, let yourself be with it. And then also don't be afraid to peer, peek open and see what might be on the other side. And I think that's something. Sometimes, yes, we're staying in the doom and gloom, but also we might be afraid of what's on the other side. I know that there are many of us who, we've gotten spiritual downloads, we've heard things in our dreams and in our wake dreams and our sleep dreams where we're being told to move in a certain direction, do a certain thing, go back to school. You don't feel like it. Take on something in a completely different industry that you were thinking about in college, but you pivoted because you got an internship right after school. So if you're hearing something, if there's been a download or message to you, now might be a time to just say, I'm going to let myself process, but also I'm going to let myself listen to myself because I'm worthy and I deserve to be heard. And perhaps I have this space and this opportunity right now to hear myself in a way that I wouldn't be able to because I've silenced myself for so
Because I've silenced myself.
long. Mhm. Yeah.
Let me write this down.
You don't get this on the daily.
Listen, you talked about the people around you who you feel like looking back, you feel were supportive of kind of pushing you out of the nest to let you fly, if you will. How did community or your support system show up for you or not
Mm.
during that time? And what did you learn about asking for help and advocating for yourself?
Oh, it's taking me back. What was really interesting about that time in my life is if you would have met me or anybody who knew me in 2019, 2020, the message that I would repeatedly share is the thing that I'm most proud of are my friendships. And I didn't care about the PhD. I didn't care about climbing the corporate ladder, the multi six-figure salary, none of those things. It's like, I've got great friends. And so to have lost friendships at that time, and two of my most important friendships in my life, people that I thought I would, be in the nursing home with, I think it blurred and blinded me around the support that I may have actually needed in that moment and didn't rely on and didn't ask for. I did a lot of white knuckling as it relates to my community itself. I closed myself off. I was like, ooh, people, folks can't be trusted. And I had a hard time remaining vulnerable. Now, what is interesting is I paid for Alonso. So I made sure that I was working with therapists and found people to support me in different ways. I had an art therapist at the time. It was somebody I'd never worked with before. He really sort of opened up my eyes while I was working with the therapist that was giving me the homegirl download. Like, you need to be focusing on yourself and all of those things. I had a really incredible massage therapist that I was working with, some spiritual healers. So what I lacked in maybe like immediate community, I had in working with healing practitioners, which I thought was really incredible. Once I transitioned and moved across the country, my community actually became my professional community. So there were a number of people who were in my network that had been waiting for me to become a full time entrepreneur, who had left my former company, that had moved into other companies, and they immediately pulled me in to start doing work. And so I was one of those people that had a very soft landing into full time entrepreneurship. Like, more money than I knew what to do with at the time, just really beautiful opportunities to do incredible work and work with the type of people that I want to work with. And so that community really showed up too. And I think those two things being so present then allowed me to recognize you're being really closed. And that may have happened, but it's not everybody and it's not your entire community because I tell you about, those couple of people, but I still had like 13 very close friends that were remaining from college. And I was like, hey, y'all, I'm sorry I've been absent. What's going on? And realized that people had been there. They had been there and they were just waiting for me to tap back in. They gave me space to be able to process because they knew how hard it was. But ultimately, I think that's the mark of good community too. Good community knows when you need space and when when it's time to tap back in. And I think when we talk about my friends and even just my family, what really worked at that time for me was giving me the space to process those losses, giving me the moments to white knuckle and to push forward myself, to move myself across the country to do all of those things. And once I got settled, saying, hey, okay, sis, you back like you never.
Yeah. Yeah. How did that experience shift the way that you view work, leadership,
Mhm.
success?
I don't know if it's just the experience. I also think it's age.
Yeah, come on.
It's like if you live enough life, right?
Yeah.
And also and I think with age, there being an expansion around the definition of success. But also, and Kristen, again, we've known each other for over 20 years at this point. I was very academically and career focused for so long that I, the way in which I viewed myself was contingent upon how successful I was at work traditionally. Like, how high can you climb this corporate ladder? How effective can you be in what you're doing with executives and leaders in this tech company? Much of a raise are you getting? Like, very, very traditional metrics. And I believe making the shift and sort of everything that came before the shift, during and after, allowed me to recognize that only I can define what success looks like and what it means for me, and that it is fluid. It will change. And it is also virtuous. So it will rise to meet me in the moment that I'm in my life. And so I'm at a time in my life now where more than anything, family is important. I love my family in my 20s and my early 30s, but that was not a priority. I'll see y'all when I come home for the holidays. And so actually having a family now, starting a family now, all those things, it's become more of a priority, but also it's helped to broaden the definition of success in a way where I don't know that if you took me back and put me in the same job, in the same role, no, I do know I wouldn't do anything. I would do things completely different. I'm not going to say that I would change anything or I regret anything, but if you said, Nandi, you're here and
Yeah.
you can actually transform some things, it's like, yeah, number one, there's going to be a lot less ego. It's going to be
Mhm.
all about team. What are we creating? What's the impact that we're making? Because the benefit is further than or beyond just me and my career and the soundbite that I can offer somebody at a networking event. So who cares? Trying to make sure I don't curse.
It's okay. It's okay. You can curse.
But just like, yeah, just trying to make sure that like it's beyond a soundbite. And I don't know that it was before because so much of my life was about let me prove this to you. Let me show you that I'm everything you think I'm not. And for the people that believed in me, let me show you that I actually can be everything that you believed too. And it's like, Now that's not even a conversation. The conversation is, well, what do I want to create on a plan before I exit? Let me focus there.
I am finding, you know, especially in government, right? People join the government because it's safe. Well, that's one of many reasons. Nobody became a federal employee thinking that they would ever be in a predicament to be let go,
No, that's fair.
right? And so, I mean, even before the shutdown, in conversations with my colleagues, my team, there are some people who really don't believe that they can do anything else, or their identity is
Mm,
so heavily wrapped up in being a GS 15, right?
yeah.
Being a member of the senior executive service. Um, and I've been concerned for some, and like not having that anymore and it being stripped away is really challenging who people thought they were,
Yeah.
right? So redefining what success looks like, especially in a job market like this,
Mhm.
there's a piece of me that wonders, when we go through these things, is it to help mold us and reshape us? Even when
Absolutely.
you talk about age, I hate throwing age at people. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
girl, you're gonna but just keep living, right?
Yes.
But there's an amazing, brilliant, beautiful woman on my team, and she is scared about everything. And I know it's because she just turned 30.
Come on.
No, it's just because she just turned 30. And I'm like, girl, just be like, "You gonna be
Oh,
okay, girl. You're gonna be okay. Just keep living." And she'll ask me, like, "Why are you so calm?" And I'm like, "'Cause I went through this in my 20s,
that's right.
right? I've been through a recession. I've had no job. So
Mm,
just keep on living." So it's definitely we all have those moments.
yeah.
I think I'm grateful that I had my first one
Talk
early
about it. Well,
on.
aren't we grateful that we had the first one coming out of college? Let's talk about that.
Right,
We had a
right.
double dip.
Had a double dip. Yes. Yes. Millennials are tired.
Yes.
We are
Tired and
tired.
tired of being resilient.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What message would you share with another Black woman specifically
Yeah.
who's just been laid off or is in the midst of this shutdown, about to miss their second paycheck, and they're wondering what now?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I'm very spiritual, but I'm not very churchy anymore. And actually, what came up as you were asking it was go in your prayer closet. I was like, what deaconess, evangelist, what
That's
is
that
going
train up a
on?
child. It's
What
in
is going
there.
on? Yes, that is being a PK. But what I will say is, I think a part of the reason why I was able to navigate all the challenges that I experienced 5 or 6 years ago, the way I was able to experience them, and it wasn't pretty up front, but it got prettier because I stayed meditating, praying, gratitude walks every morning. Like my spiritual practice was unmatched. November 2019 probably got disrupted when I met my husband, December 2020 or January 2021. Like, yeah, like for a solid year, every morning, every night, in between, I was having tea, coffee with higher power. Like, look, did you see what just happened? Did you like really, really dialed in? And it's not actually about the higher power, it's about you have probably been neglecting yourself, especially as a Black woman. Up until this point, you've been taking care of your spouse or ex spouse, you're taking care of your kids, you're doing emotional labor for everybody that's around you. And so when you're in the act of, I've created a routine for myself. I'm reading whatever inspirational word I'm reading. I'm meditating. I'm making myself yummy tea. I'm giving myself a bath. I'm taking care of myself. There's a way in which that is sort of worship overarchingly, but it's also self worship in the most positive, not self aggrandizing way. It's like, oh, okay, I'm a temple. I am something. I am holding something. And what's really beautiful about that is that's where the revelations come. When you get connected enough to yourself, all of a sudden you can hear yourself. And when you can hear yourself, now everything begins to make sense. You begin to connect the dots backwards. You begin to hear about what's calling you forward and what's calling you higher. But if you don't get rid of that noise, if you don't get still, you won't ever hear it. You're just going to jump back in another job or the same job and wonder, well, what did I do at that time? It was an absolute waste. Sorry.
Go on and preach. Go on and preach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. That is a word.
Yeah.
A word. And
One more thing.
mhm.
Don't forget to honor and affirm yourself because situations like this will try and make you forget who you are. And who you are has nothing to do with how external circumstances unfold. And I think this is a part of age too. It's like you learn they're just got to keep unfolding no matter what, but who you are is constant. So if you can dial into, well, outside of those four walls of work, what do I value and what value do I add? You give yourself permission to take yourself wherever you go versus yourself being stuck in the job that you've been laid off or furloughed from. Excuse me. Sorry, just wanted to add that piece. You gotta take yourself with you.
Have you been listening to the podcast? Because, girl, that was yesterday's episode. It was about what's still true, even when the circumstances change.
That's good, and I haven't gotten to yesterday's episode yet, so I'm glad that I said that in alignment. In alignment.
Yes, yes. It's so true. Like, as a Fed who has been putting feelers out and applying since November of last year,
Yeah.
that is when I pray, when I go on these job interviews, I'm like, I don't want to end up in some new mess.
Mm,
I don't
okay.
want to end up in some new mess,
Take it.
and I think I understand that people have to eat. I understand that bills have to be paid. And also, when else have I been this is my first furlough. I mean, I know there's been
Mhm.
tons, right? But when else do I get a month
Talk about it.
to rest and explore, dance, podcast, to be able to dream again? Mm, I had something else and I lost it. Since I gotta write stuff down because I don't remember stuff. Give me a
Sorry, not
second.
a pencil number two.
It's the fat one too. It's the fat one. Listen, we gotta
Uh,
use what we have around here,
we
okay?
know.
They take the pens off my desk. I'm just like, nobody's using the fat pencils anymore, so they're always available.
I love it, and I have it to look forward to. I'm grateful. One thing that I'll add to what I just said, which I think goes back and speaks to maybe what you're trying to get at around the value of community, is sometimes when you can't remind yourself of who you are, your friends will, your family will, the people that are closest to you will. And this may be, I know we talked about this the other day, and I think you may have had a podcast episode on this as well around like, the fact that you can always go home and home looks different for everybody. But sometimes you will need to go home. And my version of going home was going back to live in my condo that I had purchased after college. And some of my same neighbors live there from when I was sophomore in college. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm okay because I know they're watching me, they're looking out for me. And just having some sort of moment to incubate can be really valuable. And so sometimes it's an actual place, but sometimes it's a person. And sometimes you might be able to get your hands on that person in person, and sometimes it may just be on the phone. And so you get to make a request. Like, I have a girlfriend who's going through a challenging time right now, and we normally have like a monthly catch up. And she was like, I need to like connect more. And I'm like, I got it. So we just have a standing message on the calendar that says, I'm reaching out on Wednesday mornings to check in. How are you doing? How are you feeling? What do you need today? You just want a voice note? Do you want a text? Do you need to talk? In order for her to feel really connected as she's going through an experience that leaves a lot of people feeling isolated, a lot of women feeling isolated. So it's quite powerful to just say what's going to feel like home for me, what's going to feel like a touchstone for me when I'm adrift, and how do I make sure that I make the request and get that?
Yeah, you can always go home
Mhm.
and come home to yourself is what I also
Mhm.
heard you say,
Absolutely.
especially when you talked about, being in your bag with those spiritual practices and
Mhm.
that gratitude is, we neglect ourselves. Sometimes we're so deep in ego, we neglect ourselves. But,
Yes.
you mentioned as we age, those priorities shift where
Mhm.
family is much higher on the priorities list than it may have been in our 20s, right?
Mhm.
When the priority might have been our career.
Yes.
So I love that. Well, Nandi, Dr. Nandi, mm, I know I'm always inspired by you. And I think, you are a testament to that when we're in crisis or a crisis happens, it doesn't mean that
Mhm.
it's the end. It can be a new beginning. It
Mhm.
can be a new beginning with a much different but better
Yeah,
ending. You're not in South Africa yet, but you've achieved some other things
absolutely.
that may not have been the top priority back then, but are now. And I hope that is anyone who's listening also holds on to that things can be better than you imagine. And you
Mhm.
can't see what's ahead,
Mhm.
but you just have to keep moving. That's what today's episode was about.
Mhm.
Live today, you got to keep
Mhm.
moving. You will figure it out.
Mhm.
You will figure
Mhm.
it out along the way.
Yeah, and borrow somebody else's belief until you believe it yourself.
I like that.
That's not a requirement. It's not a requirement that you believe that something else is happening or going to avail itself on the other side of this. Like a lot of people will say when you're in situations like this, just gotta hold on. You gotta try. It's like, or not. Or you can say, I don't have any belief, but Kristen, I'm gonna take your belief because I know you see something in me that I haven't seen in myself. Or I'm gonna get in my historical bag and I'm gonna believe that well, Harriet Tubman saw stuff that nobody else can see. Somebody else is shining the light for me and taking us to freedom. I ain't met them yet. I'm not there yet, but I'm going, right?
Yeah.
There's an opportunity to just say, I may not be able to see it and I may not even believe it, but I actually trust when I look at the trajectory of life, when I look at my history. Look at all the people that died in the transatlantic slave trade. And the fact that my ancestors got here plus, 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 plus. Look at me right now dealing with a layoff, but they made it all the way over.
Yeah.
I'm made for this. I'm built for this. I got this. You don't even have to believe something in the future. You can just look to the past and be inspired and be motivated and trust actually that your bloodline, that your moment, that your life doesn't really need it. That's how it works. Sorry. I know you're trying to hop on this thing.
No, no. And like on that note, I don't know what else there is to say. I don't know what
Mhm.
else there is to say, but that's awesome. That's true. And now I'm like, let me go look at the past and
Mhm.
pull up those receipts
Come on.
and pull up those receipts. Well, thank you.
Of course.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking time and thank you for sharing your part of your story with us
Absolutely.
today. And I hope you have a great weekend at the
Yes.
beach.
You too. I will.
If today's episode spoke to you, if it made you pause, breathe, or feel just a little more seen, I'd love for you to share it with someone who might need it too. We're working to build community through these conversations, one story at a time, and your share helps this message reach more people who could use a little ease right now. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, take a second to leave a 5-star review and a few words about what resonated with you. It really helps others find the show and join our circle. Until next time, take care of yourself, give yourself grace, and remember, you are allowed to feel at ease, even in uncertain times. And if the government is still shut down, I will see you tomorrow.